In this video, we're going to take a look at what's called data validation. In Excel, by default, you can enter any value into a cell. Data validation is used to help prevent a user from accidentally or incorrectly entering information into a cell. So we'll start over here in cell I3. And on the ribbon here at the top, we'll choose the Data tab, and then we'll choose Data Validation. And this dialog box, choose Input Message first. We'll give a title here of, let's just say, birthday. And the input message is, enter your date of birth. When we click OK, if I click away from the cell, you'll notice nothing unique or special about it. But if I click on the cell, then it gives me this message to enter my date of birth. Now, an input message is somewhat different than a comment. A cell comment or note, select the Review tab and choose Note, New Note. And now here I could also say, enter your date of birth. And when I click on that cell or hover over it, I get this message and it has a little red triangle in the corner. An input message is hidden until you select that cell. Let's practice another type of validation here in column K. If we go back to the Data tab and we choose Data Validation, and now in the Settings tab, you can curtail or limit the types of data that a user inputs into a given cell or a given set of cells. We won't go through all of these, but we'll look at a couple of them, starting with this text length option. If I want to choose a minimum and a maximum length of text allowed, let's say it has to be at least 4 and a maximum of 10 characters. Now if I try to type something in here that is shorter than that, I'd get this error message that does not allow me to continue. So if I hit retry and now instead spell teach, it allows me to enter that without any errors. Additionally, instead of any value or a between certain length text, I can choose equal to and force the length to be equal to 4 characters. For example, if I needed a year to be entered here, I could do that by making sure that they enter 4 characters. Sliding over here to column M, we can add an additional validation. Let's choose decimal. This time, I'm going to say a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 1. This means that I have to enter something that starts with a decimal between those numbers. If I enter something above that number, again, I get this error message. Continuing to slide over, let's look at another example here with a date. Again, I can choose a range of dates, or I can choose any of these other options too, such as not between or greater than a certain date. So if someone needs to be older than a certain age, occasionally people filling out a form quickly will type in the current year instead of their birth year. You could choose a year to start with and then set the date validation to be somewhere above that specific start date. Now, when we tried to use these various forms of blocking input, we got a generic error message. You can actually create a custom error alert. First though, let's look at the list. To choose a list, you can choose a list of cells on the sheet that contain data, or you can type in the words themselves. So item 1, item 2, for example. In here, if I choose the error alert, I can choose a different style of alert. I can give it a title. And now when I click OK, if I try to choose something other than one of these, let's just say I want to choose item 3. It gives me a customized error message that I have come up with in the data validation menu. Now I want to show you one more example of using the list data validation option. Let's say we look at these part numbers and we want to have the user select a part number that is on this list. I like to use these cell styles here, and if we choose the input style, we can then go to data, data validation, and we'll choose to allow a list. When it asks for the source, we'll choose our part number list here. Use Control-Shift down to get all the way. Click OK. Now when I go up to this input cell here, you'll notice it gives me a list of all the numbers. And not only can I select the numbers from a list, but I can also type them in. So if I look over on the side and I see 1026-3168, I can hit enter and it will accept that. But if that number doesn't exist on the list, I get the error, which again you can customize to be whatever you need to show. This works particularly well on a dashboard or a summary sheet where you need the user to select something from a predetermined list of values. Now to finish up, I'll show you one example of creating such a summary sheet. If we label this sheet data and we use another sheet here at the beginning, we'll just call this summary. We can use the same option to choose a part number from a drop-down list. We'll choose data validation, we'll choose list. The source will go over to this page here, select the entire list. We'll make a custom error. Tell the user that they need to pick a valid item, and then we'll use this formatting here to choose it as an input. Now let's say that I don't like the formatting that comes with the base input cell style up here. I can actually right click on it and choose modify. I can choose to format whatever I want. Let's say I want a yellow color instead for the background, and let's say for the font I prefer to use maybe just a regular black color, but I'd like it to be a little bit larger. If I click OK on that and click OK again, all of the cells that use this input style will now be updated. So that's one way that you can keep the look and feel consistent across your workbooks. If we pick the part number from this list, let's say that then we want to choose to show all of the relevant data for that part number from this sheet here. One way that we can do that is to use a formula called XLOOKUP. And the lookup value will be this particular cell here, and we'll use F4 to anchor that. The lookup array is going to be this full list of part numbers here, and we'll use F4 again to anchor that. And then the return array will be this next column here. And what I'm going to do is anchor only the rows so that as I drag it over, it will fill in the rest of the data. The other arguments in this are optional, and so I'm going to choose not to use them. And here you notice I have the price back for that particular item. I can actually copy these headers in. We'll paste them right here. And then here I can drag this formula over. If I want to make sure to use the right formatting, I can use Format Painter and paint the format right there. Now, these may look fine going across on this data sheet, but let's say on the Summary tab we'd like to list them going down. I can copy this, use the Paste Special options here, and choose Transpose. And when I click OK, you'll notice all the formulas are still there and it's copied correctly, but it's just listed in rows instead of columns. We'll align these the correct way. We'll make this bold as well to match. And then what we can do is we can choose View, turn off the grid lines. We may want to put a box around this information to make it stand out. And we'll just tighten these up a little bit here. And I like to zoom in so that the user can see what's going on. So now we can choose any part from this list and we're able to get all of the relevant information. Now you'll have opportunities throughout the semester to use these drop downs in your projects, and you'll probably have opportunities outside of this semester. So it's a useful skill to have, knowing how to validate the data that's being entered by a user.